Thanks so much for doing this with us, Dustin. It's awesome.
Oh, sure thing. Thanks for coming, everybody. This is great. It's been a strange time here where we haven't had any visitors to the space. A little bit about myself. My name is Dustin Williams. Like Michelle said, I'm the program manager here and the lead preparator. Preparator is sort of an art world term for installer. So I manage the installation of the exhibitions. And in my role as program manager, that starts a little earlier. So as an exhibition is being developed or the concept is in talks, I work with the curators and the artists to sort of decide physically how the exhibition can exist in our space. And so we go through a series of layouts and talking about what artwork will work for the show and what the needs are for each individual piece to actually have it arrive in the space and then be displayed. And then the preparator part of my role is doing the actual physical work. And so we usually work with a team of volunteers who are often students from art schools or universities or just from the community that are interested. And we work together to put the artwork physically up in the space. Disjecta is a nonprofit art space. We're located in North Portland in the Kenton area. It's sort of a large warehouse style space. I would call it like an industrial look. You can tell a little bit from the background. And I'm sorry about the lights. All of our lighting are overhead, so we might be getting a little bit of glare here. But we have a large kind of sweeping ceiling, and then the gallery space is built in here with walls moving all the way around. It's a very versatile space. I feel like we can do a lot. It's an open floor plan, but we have the ability to do a little bit of building in here, which we had to do for this show. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we walk around. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit art space, so we function a little differently than galleries do. Commercial galleries are focused on bringing work, a monthly exhibition to the public, and then working through sales for the month, courting collectors and people who come in to see work and will actually purchase the work and bring it home. For us, we're more focused on bringing the work here and supporting the artists from the beginning. We belong to a system called wage, which means we pay artists to do their profession, which is make art. So they receive an honorarium or a stipend, and they're able to use that money to do what their job is, which is make art. And so that hopefully helps them create work and take time to either use that money to rent a studio space or to buy materials, to do research or to take time off work, anything that could facilitate the process of art making. Another way that we differ is we have a series of programming that involves, there's a couple different parts of it. We curate our own shows. Blake Shell is the director, not only the director of the organization, but also the artistic director. So we often come up with maybe one exhibition a year that is created here in-house. For the most part, then we work with partners on bringing exhibitions to our space, and that may be one of our main programs is the Curator in Residence series, which is in its 10th year right now. And we, through an application process, people write in and apply and give their proposal for what work they would like to do. And then we work with them for a year. And they bring 4 shows to the gallery space. And the goal here is that they all relate to each other in one large overarching topic, but each individual show is part of what that whole, what you would call a season of exhibitions relates to. And then at the end, we gather all the information and publish it in a catalog. This year has been a strange year for us. Obviously, it's been strange for you all too, where we actually just missed our last show, which would have been the 3rd in our series of Curator in Residence. But sort of an interesting thing about that show is that we were able to, because of the nature of the show, we were able to just photograph each object and put it online. There wasn't an artist per se that was represented in the gallery. We put out a call to the community for people to submit their own objects. So people, anyone could bring in an object, and we photographed each one And now that's all on our website. So if you'd like to learn more about it, you can go to the exhibition part of our website. And the current season is season 9, Justin Hoover, and show 3 we just released this week, and it's called Dimensions of the Sacred. So that's one great place to look for objects to draw observationally if you'd like. There's about 25 amazing little pieces that are there.
That's a great idea. I sent them, I think, or I'm going to send them a link to the Hallie Ford exhibition to draw from. But I think that the Sacred Objects show, I think, would also be, that's a really good idea. I'll send that link as well, and they can choose which one they want to draw from.
On our website, we sort of we pick through, and we have all of our exhibitions documented, and we put about 25 pictures, I think, per exhibition on the website. But if you'd like to dig deeper, we do post every image that's taken of our shows on a Flickr site. So if you look up Disjecta and then on the website Flickr, there's close to about 200 photos for each exhibition. So there's a lot more to see and experience if you choose to go that route, and that is organized by exhibition. So there is a folder of Hallie Ford, and you can dig a little deeper into there. So a little bit more about Disjecta. Disjecta started off as sort of a more of an underground pop-up art project space, and it has existed in several locations before it landed here about 8 years ago. So before, it would kind of pop up in the warehouse spaces or in other galleries or in people's homes even, and some of the early shows had more of like a party atmosphere, or like a, like a lot of musicians and things would play, and some of the events, a lot of performance-based activities and actions. And now that we've been in this space, we've renovated it, and we have a permanent home. So we've been based here for, like I said, about 8 years. The building has, we're the main tenants of the building, and we have 5 other arts organizations that are housed within the building. They're subtenants of ours, and we all use the space together to create more programming and bring more to see for visitors that come. So we have a photo organization called Photo Lucida. We have Small Talk Collective, which is another photo-based exhibition space. She Shreds magazine, which focuses on women in rock and roll and just in the music business in general. We have Flock, which is a movement and dance studio. So there's a dance and performance space here. Pulp and Decal, which is a paper making lab. And Carnation Contemporary, which is another contemporary art space like we are. So they also have monthly shows here. And we collaborate on lectures and talks and programs. And whenever possible, we like to have all the doors open and people showing what they do in their spaces as well.
You guys do first Saturdays?
We do, yeah. I mean, we just started doing that before all this happened. I feel like that's something that has happened to quite a few organizations, where the summer is when you launch a lot of programming. And so a lot of the plans that we've had to kind of put on hold. As I said, we haven't, we didn't mount some of our exhibitions that we've had, and instead of what we've done is we've extended the duration that Hallie Ford will be up for. We were able to extend the loan through the summer, so when we open back up, this exhibition will still be up for people who weren't able to see it during the time when they would have been able to come in. So for Saturday, yes, it's been put on hold, which was kind of something that was it was hard to deal with, because we had I was very excited about a lot of the programming that we had. We had some interactive exhibits that were planned, like one night only performances from local musicians and sound artists. We had to put, I think, about 4 months worth of it on hold. So hopefully we'll be able to reorganize our schedule and bring those artists back into the space. But I am happy that we were able to keep this exhibition up. And this exhibition is traveling, and it doesn't need to be at its next venue until late fall or in winter. So we're able to keep this up before we pack it.
It's such a great show. I feel so lucky to have been able to bring students in last term and see it in person.
It is a great show. It's very strong. It's so the Hallie Ford Fellows in the Visual Arts is an award that's given to mid-career artists from the area, local regional artists. And right now we're showing 3 years worth of award recipients. So we're showing 2014, 2015, and 2016. And I believe that up to 5 or so artists are able to receive the award every year. Right now we're showing 13 people. So 13 artists is a lot. A lot of the artists, they're working in sort of large scale. Most of them are working in multiples or sculptural objects. You can see behind me, a lot of the pieces are like this piece here is Samantha Wall, and this is Storm Tharp. And then back here is Ben Buswell. They take up a lot of space because they are groupings, large scale groupings of work. A lot of them are anywhere from 12 to 35 pieces of art, all told, when it's seen together in one group. So for this show, something that was fun for us to do, or fun for me to do, was to do a little bit of building and build a wall. When looking at the layout, this wall that's right here behind me, right there, was added on to show this work because when we start doing the layout and plotting all the work out on paper, we could see how many linear feet are needed, and we needed about close to 75 feet of wall space that we didn't have in the exhibition, in the gallery as it stood. So I brought in a couple of volunteers, and we spent a few days building a wall in here, which is super fun. I always love doing that. And that way we could give everything like the room that it needed without crowding all of the work together. And something that's real important to us with a group show is that the works are able to be seen alone, while they're also able to interact with each other. And I think that the exciting part of a group show is making all these connections between work. This show isn't about a theme or about a topic or about one thing. There was no call that they said, hey, this work is about the body or about identity or anything like that. These artists were chosen based on their body of work throughout their artistic career. So they were chosen on the merits of themselves, and rather than like what a specific work would be. And so that's a little bit different. So putting everybody together and placing their work in proximity becomes about making connections in the work that exists, and not necessarily about, like I said, a topic or something like that that you have heard. And I feel like the longer, since this show's been up for a little while and I've had the opportunity to be with them, you start to draw so many more connections with the work, the more that you're able to learn about them and see them. And it's fascinating to me that how the work looks like it was all made together, in a cohesive way, for because it doesn't feel disjointed or like one person, one person, one person, one person. It feels like there's a collective energy in the space, which is wonderful, and that's a big hope of ours that happened.
I love the presentation too. I mean, like the storm series on the wall behind you, and then kind of looking in the distance to the Samantha Wall pieces, this kind of grid that seems to kind of be a pattern throughout the whole show. And I think when we came the last time, you guys had said that at least Storm had kind of set everything up in that arrangement, and worked with you guys on kind of the numbering of them and the placement of them all. And I think how interesting it is to even see it on a screen and see like how it totally is just like exactly like you're saying, having a conversation with Ben's work in the corner and then Samantha's work, in the grid pattern again. I'm really excited to talk about Samantha's too, the arrangement and the configuration and why it's in that particular configuration. Cause I think that's really interesting and not that obvious, when you kind of first see it from afar. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then, and a word about Storm, we are, I think at the beginning of this next week, we are going to add some more content to our website. That's one thing that I think Michelle was talking to you all earlier about, is like, what do we do during this time, or how do we stay vital or engaged when we can't open our doors to people to come in, which is what a gallery is, people coming in and seeing the work. But we've been turning to our website, and we've been turning to additional content. And so we've approached our artists who are on view right now and asked them if they had anything that they could share with us that would allow people at home to have a deeper connection or to look more thoroughly at the work. And so Storm in particular has provided us with some amazing content about his works in progress, the process of making the artwork. And that includes some videos of him actually making the drawings in his studio space, and some of the I'll show you a little bit about what I'm talking about here. So this is Storm Tharp. You can get most of his piece in the view here. It's a large scale piece. Each one of these is about 18 by 30. So they're fairly large drawings. They're what I would call monotypes. He's drawing on glass with paint and then printing them. And so every print is different. The first print he pulls is going to be the cleanest and clearest. And then every additional print after that is going to sort of abstract and fade and become a little more blurred. And so within there, he edits himself to see what he would like to keep and what he would like to take away. Storm told us that he never saw this whole body of work together. You can tell that some of the work is more figurative, like these have like portraits on them. And then some of these are just abstract fields of color like these here. And originally there were two separate bodies of work that could be shown like maybe side by side. But as he was putting them up in the studio, you start to see these connections. And even the ones that are purely abstract, like say this one here, or this one, start to be figurative. And you start to see a person or a body in there as well. So I think that what's really strong about this piece is having these moments where like you've got this face and then you have a moment to breathe and just see this color field and this shape, and then you have this other pattern here.
I
These
love
drawings
this piece. It's so good. Just like
it's great.
all the pieces individually and then kind of coming
Mhm.
together to form one solid wall of a piece. It functions kind of like a mural and,
Great.
you know, a crowd of people, you know, and oddly enough, I just kind of made this connection right now too, like thinking about it, it totally, and this is before the pandemic, but it looks like a Zoom session.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought of that right now. It looks like my classroom,
Yeah, that's
you
funny.
know, and then like some of the pieces are like, you know, the students can't, you know, for technical reasons or, you know, they feel uncomfortable or whatever, are not showing their faces. So it's like those are like
Mhm.
the abstract ones, like the color fields, you know, they're kind of
Yeah.
like obliterating the faces. And then the ones that you know, are more figurative, it's like they're moving, they're in motion. And sometimes they're, you know, kind of stopped midway through because of a, you know, a blip in the internet or something like that. So they kind of look like that too. That's so weird.
Yeah.
I just made that connection. That's so funny.
It is. It's like I know this whole thing is making us think differently about everything.
It's really prophetic. It feels really prophetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a large work too. I don't know if you can get a sense of scale. I'll walk back to it in a moment. I mean, these are big pieces. Each piece is fairly large. So this whole wall, the height of it is just about 16 feet. So it's a large scale piece, and to watch him do these drawings, it's wonderful to see the big, quick, sweeping gesture that he's doing. That they're quickly drawn because the paint would start to dry as you lay it on the glass. And so the stuff we'll launch on Wednesday. I mean on Monday will be what the glass looks like with the drawing on it and the paper next to it, and then you can see what that process is like. It's pretty interesting.
Do you guys remember, at least in one of the lectures that I gave in the last couple of weeks, I brought in Storm's work. Do you remember that? There was one with like a flower. We were looking at, I think it was the still life lecture in particular, but there was a flower, like a rose, and then like I think they're with a rope, and then there was a one like a plum in it. That's Storm's work. So yeah, he's originally from Portland, right?
He is. I believe now though he's living in Tokyo. He lives and works in Tokyo.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions before we move on? I know you're all being pretty quiet this morning. New venue, new person.
Mhm.
But I'd love for you to interact and ask questions as we go.
Yeah,
You can
yeah, I'm
talk
just
to,
amazed. That's all. This is pretty awesome. Like that piece, I didn't realize how big it was until he stuffed back and
Yeah.
showed that dang, that's huge, and that's just so beautiful. It's crazy. I mean, like it looks kind of uh, I mean, some of them I can't really tell too much. I'm looking at this from my phone, but it looks a little like grotesque in some of them. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but it's just like it just I'm a comic artist, so like it looks very comic booky, like talking heads, like and their little story beats to them. So just I don't know. I really appreciate it. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty wonderful. A lot of them I feel like have a sort of like a doubleness to them. It's not just one look. You see a face looking this way and a face looking that way, and they're both kind of merged together in this really interesting way. You know, that it describes like movement and like the quickness of it all. You know, it's
Yeah,
I
absolutely. Yeah,
appreciate,
especially when it looks like it's made with brush. So like it's kind of got that like lively, you know, wiggle, like, you know, wobbliness to it. So it's, yeah, man, that's weird.
There's going to be a project too at the end of the term. I think it's your last project, that is the body in motion. And this is totally an artist to make note of. I mean, in general, you should be looking at Storm's work, I think, all the time, because he's just fantastic. His drawings and paintings are some of my favorite that I've ever seen. But for that particular project, I think this is a really great artist to kind of be looking at for inspiration.
Yeah.
I think there was somebody else that wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say, I like how abstract the people look.
Mm-hmm.
Like the faces look very, very abstract, and I really like that.
Yeah. It's quite nice. Maybe I can move up closer to one of them here. So you can see like just this first one. Like I think that what we mentioned before about the brushwork on them, you get all this the great variance in the line thickness, and so some of it is really heavy, and then you still get this detail, which describes a lot in the thinness of some of the lines there, which is great.
I'm taking some photos too as we go. Yeah, it looks fantastic, gorgeous. Look at that nose.
Yeah, it's serious, right?
Yeah.
That nose to me is almost more skull-like in a way, you know. It's got a
absence of a nose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'll spin us around here, and we could look at Blair Saxon Hill's work, since we're right here. Blair is another, well, they're all Portland artists, but again, to kind of in a funny connection that I didn't know about until yesterday or earlier this week, is that these works were also made for Japan. This work was originally planned for a wall in a subway that's 500 meters long, glass cases along a subway. So 4 pieces are being shown here in our space out of 27 that were created for that work. And what you're looking at, and I'll kind of zoom in on one, it's a large photograph of a collage. Blair works collecting kind of ephemera and books from Oceania, Africa, like European art books, and like kind of classic black and white photography of objects, and the artists that make them cuts them up, combines them, and reimagines them and repurposes them, and sort of obscures most of the information and comes up with these characters and figures and objects, and then that work is then photographed and blown up to a larger size. And so you still have a lot of this, the torn edge of the paper that you see on the far side, and the page numbers and all of these things. And so what's happening is you're showing some of the artists, like see with this arm of an artist, but then you're also like taking all the information away by not showing their portrait or who they actually are. And so some of this work more easily references like the actual objects that are there. Works from I see a lot of the works from Africa, the masks, figures, like totems, things like that, and sort of given a new little life here. I think they're like very relatable. You recognize everything at first, and then you see what these new characters are. So it's kind of I think it's a fascinating project to sort of cut things apart and put them back together. I think collage is an amazing medium, as far as like how energetic it is or can be.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone too far into this with this class yet, but thinking about drawing as collage is a really interesting thing. So even with all of your Vanitas drawings, you were in fact making collages. You know, you were probably working from one still life, but if you think about kind of each object, you know, and the arrangement of those objects kind of placed together in one composition, you were collaging these objects together, and then eventually you were collaging them kind of, but with drawing down on paper. So sorry, my cat is screaming in the background, you probably can hear, but yeah, so I think that's a really cool kind of perspective on it.
Yeah, these works, I think again, something that's fascinating about a lot of the work that is shown here during this exhibition is that is the repetition of thing and the exploration of a medium over time. So it's finding a process or finding an idea and working through it over and over and over again, and seeing how it develops as you sort of master the process or get better at the actual physical process, and then the idea becomes clearer and clearer as you work through it. So it's very interesting to me. Speaking of Vanitas, I was just now thinking of how, in a very different way, this work by, let me see if I can get over here, by Tanaz Farsi is a bit of a Vanitas in a way, because what Tanaz does is gather objects and things that relate to her life over time and display them together in an arrangement. So you have objects that are collected from a history of living in various places around the world, and the passage of time as you move from one place to another. And so again, it's a similar thing where it's a collection of objects that relate to a lifetime, basically. This work is one of the ones I think that changed the most when it came to Disjecta. It becomes a new configuration every time it is shown somewhere. And for us, we have this great sloping wall. I'm going the wrong way here. So we were able to give that to Tanaz and see which way that she would like to organize this work. And so we worked together on that. She sent many diagrams, and we got all the work together in this pattern here. You'll see there's
it's super interesting. I love thinking about it as a vanitas. Coming in there, I think, in the space in person, I didn't make that relationship at all. And I love that you just did. And it's totally functioning as a collage too,
It is.
And a still life setup.
Right. And so again, how this couldn't be more different from, say, Blair's work, right? But we can draw a lot of those same connections where you're taking something and rearranging it and finding new meanings and exploring what the components are over and over again. And then, we talked for a moment about Storm's work and the scale of it, and how you can use color and line and shape and really sort of and come up with sort of an infinite number of possibilities here. I was just looking at the work of Lynn Turner Woods, and I don't know if you can get in there close enough, but they're fairly tiny drawings. They're only, I think they're 3 inch by 3 inch.
Can you get any closer, Justin? Sorry.
Yeah, let's see if we can be able to see those.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so with just very light line and color, like a very limited palette, you'll see how many works there are here.
It's that grid again.
It's the grid again, and that sort of the digging through how much you could pull out of just a very simple set of like basically like artistic parameters, just line, and a lot of the drawing is happening from the paper itself, from being able to see the pulp in it and the different like flecks of materials that make up the paper. And so you have like just a small number of colors and barely any line work there, but you're able to like make this exploration over and over again throughout the work.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Do you all have questions as we go? I mean, again, feel free to just kind of hop in. We can talk to Dustin too about his role at Disjecta. We can talk to him about his career. We can talk to him about the actual physical space. I mean, I'm sure you all have questions if you're thinking about in any way going into the arts. I think showing at a space like Disjecta is such a, honor, I think. It's such a prestigious and kind of fantastic, beautiful space to exhibit your work. I mean, I think like any questions related to like kind of how to get there, or like, career wise, like, what Dustin's doing as a preparator and as a manager of this art center, any questions like that you might have, feel free to jump in and ask.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I'm an artist myself, and I've always like worked in the arts. And when I went to art school, I went to Savannah, Georgia, and there I started spending time in the gallery spaces. And my father is a contractor, So I always worked with him doing kind of like painting and building. And so the two things sort of merge together a little bit here is basically what has happened. And so like coming to a space like this and building walls and then hanging the art on it is kind of the marriage of those two things that I've done. I started working in Boston, Massachusetts at the museum school there, which is School of the Museum of Fine Arts. It's an art college that's attached to the Museum of Fine Arts. I don't think it exists anymore. I think it was absorbed by Tufts University. But there I worked and managed the student galleries while I was there. And then from there, I went across the street to the museum. And the museum is very different world than, say, a gallery world. The museum, its role is different in how it shows work and the audience that it supports. And I think that I felt like the museum's pace was a little heavy, and it's sort of on a scale that's tough to stay involved with. It became very much like work to me instead of something that I felt passionate about, because our schedule was so quick, so fast and furious, and we were moving works every day, often working on 2 to 3 shows at the same time. But it's an institution of this size, which I feel like is in between a gallery and a museum. It's much more. It feels more personalized. It feels more like I get these great relationships with the people who are actually making the work and what the work means, and then also with the guests and visitors that come to see the work. I'm able to like interact with people like y'all when you come in, and so I feel like there's various levels of what involvement in the art world can be. And for people who are physically handling the artwork, I feel like this to me is a good fit. This is what I was looking for when I've been, I've worked in private galleries, and that is also, it can be very exciting too. But I feel like the connection for me is not as, it's not as close as far as the schedule of the work. I mean, here we leave our shows up for a little longer. The shows are generally up for about 7 weeks, which I think is a nicer pace. And honestly, having to not worry about sales, it's great. And really just to live with the work and watch people experience it is great. I mean, we do a fair amount of fundraising, and we do have an auction each year, and so there are things like that, because you do want art to go to the people who love it and want to live with it. But I think facilitating it the way that we do it here is we connect people and let them handle that basically on their own, which is kind of nice.
Have you guys been to galleries before? Art galleries, maybe besides Archer on campus? Have you ever been to an art gallery? Angelica says yes. Do you remember the name of it, Angelica? Okay, in Seattle. Yeah. You haven't been to one, Chloe? Yeah, I mean, I wish, this class, when I taught it in the fall, we went on 4 physical field trips, and I'm so sad that we can't right now. I mean, this is obviously the next best thing, but yeah, I mean, I think it's such an important thing, and there are so many galleries in the area, really fantastic spaces to go check out. So yeah, I mean, whenever things are calmed down, we're able to kind of go back into these spaces again. I think, the Northwest in Portland is just full of galleries, really, really fantastic, gorgeous work and shows on a regular basis. So hopefully you get a chance to go soon. But yeah, and Disject is really close to Clark, actually, physically. It's only like a 10-minute drive from Clark. So again, when this is all kind of over and we're able to go into spaces again, I highly recommend going to Disject in person and being there and seeing what's going on. So sorry, people are kind of talking. Yeah.
So one question that was there, that was, do we ever have live performances? Do we have live performances here at Disjecta? We do. We aren't able to do them now, but there's several ways that we do that. We engage with the community through partnerships. So we I feel like what Michelle was talking about with like basically like if we take Portland's art scene and the galleries that are around town, there's a really wonderful sense of community here, and all of the galleries really support each other, and they often share artists, and you see people visiting each other's spaces. There's kind of there's a really great community here, which I'm very proud and happy to be a part of. And we some of the organizations that we partner with on a regular basis, one that comes to mind is Friends of Noise, which is an all ages concert series, and they don't have a venue, so they find places in town, and it's run by Andre Middleton, and he works with folks who want to perform, and that could be in any way. Say they have a punk band, or they want to read poetry, or they do hip hop, or whatever they do. They organize the shows, they book the show, they do the sound, they do the flyers for it, they get the artists there, they run all the sound equipment for it, the technical aspects, then they sell the tickets, they do the entire thing. And it's so that folks that are under 18 can participate in the performance world. And so we do a monthly series with them. I think it's one Friday a month. But of course that's on hold now. But so we do things like that. We also work with PCC, and they have a really exciting sound program there. That they have a 32 channel system called Unity Gain, which means like when you think of a stereo or when you listen to music at home, it's in 2 channels, left and right. You've got your 2 like headphones, say. This system is 32 channels, so there's 32 individual speakers playing a different channel of music, and so we bring that here. They're able to install it like up above here in our ceiling and all around down on the walls, and so when you stand in the middle of it, you get a fully 3-dimensional surround sound experience. One performance from last year that was like really, I felt was like very, very powerful was one of the students had took audio recordings of the protests for the Trump inauguration, and then played those and separated out all the audio. So while you were there, you could hear individual voices of people surrounding you. You could hear police sirens, you could hear whistles, you could hear people yelling, you could hear people clapping, and it was just such a full, like, just immersive, just wonderful experience. So that's something that we hope to do again in June. Those students are not able to take the classes that they need or to interact with the system, so they're looking to ways to do that differently. But yeah, we tried to, we're mostly a visual arts organization, but we tried to do as much as we can to round out the artistic experience. We also have Flock, who that I mentioned before, the movement and dance studio, and so they have often engaged the space before with dance and movement when possible. So yeah, we love to I love to bring especially like sound here. Sometimes we just have concerts or things like that, or have bands play within the exhibition space. We've brought a couple people here to say like set up in a corner while you're surrounded by art, which I think is also quite a lovely experience.
I like I love how just kind of diversified like all the different exhibitions are, the events that you guys have, and just really running the gamut of like what art can be. And I was just thinking about like sound and how, like, you know, oftentimes we don't really think about visual art as having a sound component, or it's like it's like a component of it, but it's not the whole thing. But there are sound artists out there that actually make entire like pieces of art that have like no object, you know, there's no like physical object, you know, associated with it, and it's just sound, and that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, or even, I mean, the piece actually that I'm sitting next to right now is Jack Ryan. Jack is a sculptural artist. I don't have it turned on right now because since we're talking, but this piece is both, it's sculptural and has sound. You can see, let me see if I can get in real close to this. See that conch shell there?
Yeah.
It's actually acts as a conduit, as a speaker itself.
What do you guys know about shells after our Vanitas lectures? What is the content of a shell? What does that mean symbolically?
These are some other ones.
It's like a test.
We said kind of like life, kind of like abundance, like because this was like the home of like a creature.
Yeah,
Oh
totally.
yeah. I'm actually going to turn that one on real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool. How are y'all doing? I see people getting lower and lower and lower into their beds. I do want you to participate. Please do. You are getting participation points for this. So.
I think this is awesome. I'm super excited to see something other than just each other's faces. So.
Yeah, right. I thought maybe you'd be excited to just listen to somebody that wasn't me for
And just see
2
more
hours.
like different types of arts. It's awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It's cool to see how people express themselves, I guess, in their different arts, because it's so different from one person to the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you can kind of hear this low hum, but
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, this is the only sound piece that we have in the show. And it's nice that it's sort of an ambient kind of background thing. You can tell which piece it's coming from, but it's a nice addition to the exhibition. It's not like overpowering, or it doesn't have sometimes I feel like when you have a show that's a group show and you have a work that's heavy on dialogue, and it sort of it has a lot of presence in some ways. So it's kind of nice to
When
have.
you looked in the piece, was that fire that it was using, like candles, or was that
Those are little bulbs.
bulbs? Yeah.
Yeah, but they're the kind that look like flickering, look like a candle flicker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some great little energy and movement there. And then I think in the back here is where you could see a little bit more of some speakers.
That was so cool that he was able to like mimic the sound of like the actual, like when you hold the shell up to your ear. That's just
Yeah.
really cool.
I don't know if you can hear that a little bit. I find it really pleasing.
Yeah, it feels
That's
like
awesome.
it feels like galactic or something, you know. It feels like you're
Yeah.
almost like it's the most natural sound, but it also feels like the most like kind of otherworldly, or like you're in space or something. Like sounds like you're in a sci-fi movie in like a rocket ship or something, like floating through.
Yeah, it definitely has a sort of sci-fi feel to it, which we thought of a little when talking about like putting artwork together in proximity. These photographs here to me had like a sort of a sci-fi feel to them. Sorry about that glare. But placed next to this sound, it really kind of adds to this, like they're so clean and crisp and sharp.
I love talking about the work in relation to obviously itself and us as the viewer, but like you're saying, in relation to other works and other kind of installations within the show, which is such a great thing about group shows in particular, I think. And I think sometimes group shows, it's a little like overwhelming. I think the way that you guys set up the show in particular, it gives all of the work enough space and breathing room to kind of exist on its own. But it's also that, like you're saying from the very beginning, like this conversation across the room, where this piece behind you, the Samantha Wall piece, is absolutely having a conversation with the Storm Tharp wall. And even though they're, 40 feet, 50 feet away from each other.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
You can see some of the works a little bit more.
That is super cool. I love how they're arranged.
Yeah, and so you see that the shape there. I don't know if you can tell. There are 31 drawings there, and it's if you can see it. Does anyone think it looks like anything in particular?
Yeah, it's the fist, like Black Lives Matter. That's what I thought right away.
Yeah, and then the grouping. Do you see how the grouping looks like a calendar?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's basically a drawing a day project. So 31 fists, and I think it was made December 2017.
Gotcha.
So you have like a drawing.
I thought it was the continent of Africa.
Yeah, you can see that in there too. That's great.
I took it as like, because there's so many, it was mostly like everyone's kind of just standing together.
Yep. Yeah, that's another.
But the calendar, that is super cool. I like that.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
think I picked up on the calendar until I went in there and I either read about it or maybe Dustin or Blake had told me, but I was like, oh my goodness. Cause I was wondering, I was like, why is it not just, a rectangle grid? Why is it, we have a little bit, up at the top and then we have a little bit down at the bottom. And then once they said it was a calendar, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Such a smart move, I think, to arrange them that way.
Yeah, I think it's like recognizable, but it doesn't hit you over the head with it necessarily.
Totally. We should talk a little bit about the materiality, I think, of Samantha's work. Because this is definitely a technique that you all can use in your own work. And thinking about ink, thinking about liquid ink on the page. And that's what she's doing here to get even, there's detail in here, right? But it's also kind of abstracted to some degree. You absolutely see that they're fists. But she's just dropping ink diluted with water to get these effects. And there's these really great value shifts throughout to really build form and structure to the hands. So something you can kind of think about, just kind of letting the ink blossom and bloom and move around the page. But there are ways of kind of taking that abstract technique and then kind of controlling it to the point where it forms, something recognizable. So really cool. Do any of you work with ink, or I know that Zoe's pieces have been done in watercolor, which is really cool. And I think Rick has done some work with ink, but.
I did some ink in my previous art class. It was kind of challenging for me because once the ink is on the paper, it's there, so there's no taking it back. So
Yeah.
that was kind of hard to get around, I guess. And also how you can make it different, like runny or thicker, it's hard to control it. But it turns out, or if people know how to use it, it looks very cool. But for me, it's very challenging.
It is really challenging, especially since right when you put it on the page, it can kind of just disperse really quickly because it's just concentrated pigmentation. And it seeps right through the page because it's so pigmented. So using the right kind of paper. But calligraphy and stuff, I think it's really fun to do. But I think Zoe said, brush pens are super cool. The Micron, the brush pens are really cool. But
yeah,
I've used the Microns for ink, but not straight out of the the little pod of India ink. But
yeah, I would definitely recommend playing with it. It's super fun. I know the permanency is intimidating, but just embrace it. That's the fun of it, letting it kind of do its thing and just kind of, letting it dry and seeing what happens and then responding to that. And we were talking a little bit about that in your critiques, but kind of really thinking about, reacting to, mistakes, or reacting to a line that you didn't intend, and seeing kind of where you can go with that and how you can kind of integrate it. And sometimes it's more exciting of a piece that way, instead of it all being entirely premeditated. My cat's back with us again.
I think something that's happening here with Samantha's is the choice of the materials that she's laying the ink on. So you have a sort of a vellum or a plasticky, something that's smooth that doesn't absorb ink quite as quickly. So the ink is allowed to pool on it and dry on its own. And that's why you're getting some of this really kind of nice organic flowy shapes that are happening as it dries. There's a little bit more push and pull with the ink than if you're putting it on, say, normal rag paper or something that it quits moving as soon as it goes down.
Yeah, they're so cool. How united they are as a group, but then as individuals, she's taking such care for each one to be made differently, to have this kind of unique presence, and kind of individual people, right?
Yeah,
I was just gonna say that. Each one is a snowflake. It's never gonna be the same. Each one is just super unique.
Yeah, exactly. someone mentioned to me about, even if it's the same person's hand, that it's going to be different each day. Like the nails are growing, and over the course of a month, or all these different things are going to be different. But and I don't remember which one of you mentioned this before, but yeah, it's like to me, there's like two things that are happening there, where with the shape, but you have all these different hands which look like a group of people, or an army of people, like with their fist up, together in unison. But it also, with the individual ones, means, like, to me, like a very personalized one, like resisting every day, or being proud every day of, just, it's not just, it can be like a whole group collective action, or it could be a very personal thing, and the way you feel and the way that you choose to be, day after day after day, throughout your life.
Yeah, it feels very impassioned. And I feel like it's even funny, like kind of from here, I was kind of thinking about the shape of the hand and kind of abstracting it to some degree. And it's more obvious now, but it kind of looks like a heart even.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, kind of this hand in the shape of a heart, or, that it just starts to feel even more impassioned.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think, can we just look at the Ben Buswell piece, and then maybe we'll end with that one.
So Ben's work is another one of the ones that's very fluid in the way that we want to install it. This was a really fun decision. So Blake, who's the artistic director, and here, she and I worked on this layout together, and we've seen Ben's work, this work in particular, in probably 4 different configurations. This is probably a third of the actual piece. And what I have here is about 24 feet of artwork there. So I think he's got about 75 or 80 feet worth of this project. And so you can use as much of it or as little as you would like. And they're all, let's see if I can get over here. Each one of these panels is on its own. So it's basically from here to here and down. And then they're placed next to each other as we just go down the row. And what we chose to do was turn a corner here and just have the piece connect and then come over, which I think having it span from one work to another really sort of connected it over to Samantha's work, but then also gave it like a lot of its own way to go here. We've seen it before, like in groups of 4, just like sections or chunks, or at the last incarnation of the show, it was just one strip contained on one wall. But I was really excited to kind of kick it back a little bit. We left some space here on this end of the wall because we have a very large sculpture here by Carl Berghammer. Where'd he go?
That sculpture is so fantastic as well.
Yes, we didn't want it to be crowded by that when you have large views of the room. So
I love the materiality of the sculpture, the Berkheimer.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. And with Ben's work, it's like you've got this great shift back and forth between 2D and 3D, I think, in Ben's work. So it's what they are, they're high resolution photographs of stones. And so you have a 3D object, which is the actual stone that's being photographed. Then you have the photograph, which brings it back down to 2D. And then Ben he makes these tools that he then scratches the surface of the photographs.
So he's like essentially drawing.
Brings it back to a 3D. Can you tell that they're?
Yeah, I love that so much. It's drawing, like he's drawing, but with cutting the photograph with an X-Acto blade, he's drawing. He's hatching and cross-hatching. Yeah. It's really cool.
And so again, then that makes it like more of a 3D thing to me, because parts of the paper are raised and coming apart. So it's got this great like shift back and forth between what it is. We also have included the sculpture here, which give you an idea of like what the works are kind of like.
Yeah, I love the texture.
Mm-hmm.
So great. All the line work in there.
That was a fun piece to install as well, the sculpture, because in unpacking Ben's work, there's a note in there with rocks that says that whoever's installing the work should think about and make a connection with the 2 pieces, and think about someone in their lives, and then display the work according to like what that feeling is. And so that was fun for me to do.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, how about just a few questions?
Yeah.
Questions for Dustin, questions about works, your own works, career stuff, Disjecta, anything.
You know, I'd say that a lot of about being an artist is just is about the community. You know, maybe if you take something away with what we're doing here, like it is about going to the galleries and seeing people and finding out what people are working on and talking to them and putting yourself out there, sharing your work with people, and just having conversations. And that's how, for me, I think that that's how the art world works. Really, it's about a sharing of ideas and supporting other artists as they go through their journey of making artwork, and sharing with them yours.
Did you
I think
say that all the artists and artwork in the gallery is only from Portland artists?
this time around it is, because the reason the show exists is it was an award that was given to, it's a regional award to artists from Oregon. So that is the focus on this. We do focus, I would say 75% of our programming is focused on regional artworks. On artists rather, but our curator in residence program doesn't have any parameters like that at all. We show internationally, and that's what's exciting about that program too. It's not only we'd like to be able to do both, you know, so we like to support the people who are here and support our community as much as possible, but then I think it also injects a lot of creativity into the process when you bring people, especially from other countries, and invite them to share their work with us. Some of my favorite shows that we've had were last season. If you look through our website, again, with Susie Halajian was our curator in residence last year, and she had pretty much mostly an international season. And it was wonderful to see works come from the Middle East, see works come from Latin American countries, and then also be paired with some of the work was by indigenous Native American, you know, First Nation artists. So just seeing like different perspectives, huge different world experience, super important.
There are a couple questions. Yeah. Chloe says, what are other types of art you've seen at shows that aren't things you display?
Maybe performance-based stuff. Would you say, Michelle? You know, like the things that are just actions. So body-based work.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what she's asking here. So other types of art you've seen at shows that aren't things you display. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was thinking specifically at Disjecta, but maybe like in galleries in general is maybe what she's talking about, because Disjecta does do performative stuff and interactive work. But I think, yeah, what's not at the show right now is, you know, kind of performative things going on. I think that's a good response.
I'm surprised with this one, and just with the way the art world is right now, that we don't have more video in it. In a group of this is a large group of artists to have in one room without having any video. Because for me, actually, a funny thing that happened to me moving here and then starting to work at Disjecta, I think I worked here for about 1.5 years before I hung my first 2D piece of artwork on the wall. Everything was sculpture, everything was video and projections and sound installations for close to two full seasons before I was ever like, oh, a painting. Let's put a painting on the wall.
Yeah, I think this one in particular, this exhibition is very object based, but I think on the other side, right? Maybe it's not up anymore, but the Coco show was very much about performance and interaction with the audience. I was there dancing for the opening, and it was fantastic. Everybody just moving their bodies around in a space and reacting in real time with each other and the music and everything. So I think that totally happens at Disjecta. It's just not a part of this particular exhibition right now.
And it has its own set of interesting problems to solve. It's like what lives on after a performance, or how do people experience that once the actual action and the actual performance has taken place? So someone does a dance or does a movement or does something for 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes in a space, and they leave. And so at that point, it becomes about possibly like documentation of that work, photographs or videos of it, or the props that people use during their performance become the objects that people see. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting question for a gallery.
It's also really fantastic for it maybe to not even be documented, like you had to be
Yeah.
there kind of situation, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of fun, like the ephemerality of the moment. It's fleeting, and you know, it doesn't even matter. I mean, we think about all these objects that are in that space right now, and they all have a shelf life. We all as people have shelf lives, right? So why would we expect that, like, you know, a piece of art would stay with us forever? I mean, nothing
Yeah.
will. So
Mm-hmm.
so it's really kind of nice and a great celebration. And even I think right now in you know, an age where we're documenting everything, like I'm documenting this right now, you know, we're recording everything, we're taking photos of everything, we're posting everything to social media all the time. It's like, wait, don't eat that food yet, I want to take a photo of it, you know. And how many of these, you know, thousands and thousands of photos do we, you know, all take? Where are they going? Are we ever going to look at them again? You know, maybe not, probably not. So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to talk about presence and being present, and what does that mean? And yeah, the fleeting moment and kind of celebrating that. And I think especially lately, how important that really is. So
Yeah.
it's a good
I mean,
conversation for sure.
I was thinking of it just in the last season. We had Damien Danyazi and Kevin Holden are two local artists, and they did a performance, and it was forbidden for anyone to document or take any pictures or anything about it to live afterwards. You truly did have to be there and experience it to be a part of it. And it
Yeah.
did give it like a certain amount of power to know like what you were watching. That's the only time it's going to exist, really.
I love that. And it's like, you start to, like, if you were invited and didn't go, you get this kind of FOMO feeling, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
I will never know what that was like. And, you know, maybe you feel like you missed out on something really cool, and everyone will be talking about it. And, you know, there's a hype that kind of comes with this thing that only exists in the moment and will never exist, like you said, you know, in that way ever again. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
totally a lot of power in that.
And in particular, they were smashing a lot of objects and destroying icons. So it can't happen again. I mean, everything they had that was there on site, they broke and
Yeah.
destroyed.
Yeah. I love that. That's fantastic. I think just one, maybe more question in here. How do, Angelica says, how do people get their art into shows? I think that's a really good one to end on. Yeah. What's your take on that?
Well, I guess there's a lot of different ways. We don't take submissions for artwork ourselves, so we either seek people out because of whatever programming it is, or when we work with the curator, that's up to them to decide who would come. So it's a little bit different, but I think, I know, Michelle, you have shown around town more and have a lot of experience with that. I feel like, do you approach people and show work, or?
Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of answers. So you know, I think for me, over my professional art career, it's been a lot of different things. Sometimes you just have a conversation with somebody in a coffee shop, and then it turns into like, oh, you're an artist? Like, I happen to be a curator. Like, let me look at your work, you know, show me your website. And then you show them, they're like, you know what, I actually have a spot. And, you know, it's just like the luck of the draw. Sometimes it's like, you know, like you said, community, like going out to art events. I think that's a huge one, where it's all about your network, and, you know, kind of being like, hey, you know, like, I know that like you're working in this field, you work at this gallery, we're friends, you know, my art, you know, there's a show coming up with these themes and your work is in, you know, this gamut. And so yeah, I mean, I think, you know, people think about you, the curators are, you know, there, that's their job, to do research on, you know, the artists, you know, that are making work within certain, you know, ideas and themes that they're familiar with and that they want to show. And so they generally search you out as an artist, I think, especially as you get older and further into your professional career. But I think when I was young and starting out, I totally went into like coffee shops, and I like asked, you know, like the people there, I was like, hey, how do I show in here? And sometimes they were really cool about it, and sometimes they weren't. I've shown in tons of different venues, like from coffee shops to I've gone into like clothing stores where they had cool art on the walls, and I was like, hey, like, how do I show my work in here? And sometimes, again, they were really cool about it, and sometimes they're like, yeah, we're not interested. We, you know, have our own, you know, curator in-house, or we decide, you know, who comes in, and or we don't really like your work, but they sometimes, hopefully they don't say it that way. But yeah, I mean, I think, and then there's calls, right? Like you were talking about calls where, you know, that's posted online somewhere, and you can keep track of that, and various institutions and arts organizations, locally, nationally, internationally, will post those calls, and you can keep tabs on that. And if your work fits, you know, kind of the bill, then you can submit. Sometimes it costs money to do that, which is unfortunate, but it can cost $25 up to $50, $75 to submit, you know, 3 images or 5 images. And then sometimes they choose your work and sometimes they don't. And but when you do get chosen, it's fantastic, because sometimes like I've ended up in shows in New York, or Los Angeles, or, you know, at a museum, and, you know, in San Francisco. You know, I've had work in, you know, shows in the UK before, you know, based on called art. And you do what you can, and we're all hustlers. I think we're all kind of just like doing what we can to get by in our professional careers. So even the people at the top.
Yeah. I mean, I think yeah, putting your stuff out there more and more is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Attending events and talking to people and asking questions, and
yeah, I think all of the artists in that show, in the Hallie Ford show, right now, I think they're all at least aware of each other's work, and they have been probably for a long time. And some of them are friends. I was thinking about, you know, Storm and Blair are friends with each other. And so, you know, it's like they think of each other, and they're, you know, their work is related, not just within the show, and not just because of the way that it's been displayed within, you know, Disjecta, but also because they're influencing each other, because they're peers of each other, you know, and they're looking at each other's work as they grow together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to look at the comments really quick, and then we'll probably bid adieu. Angelica says, how do they scout these people? So basically you just have to put yourself out there and hopefully be found. We can have a longer conversation about it. There's more strategy to it than that. I think sometimes it's not, though. Sometimes it's really, like, again, just about kind of building this community, and community is each other as well. Like, you will grow together. That was like one of like the most like mind-blowing pieces of advice somebody gave me in grad school, was just like, hey, like, you should all be talking to each other and supporting each other's work and helping each other out, because you don't know where these people are going to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Obviously it's good to, like, you know, be friends with each other and build community in that way right now. But thinking about the fact that some of you will go on to be, you know, curators of galleries, and you will go on to be professors of art, and you will go on to be great designers and all sorts of different things. And if you keep tabs on each other, you can help each other out as you go. If you're a really great artist and you happen to be friends with a really great curator, they're going to keep you in mind, and they'll bring your work into that space and show you. So yeah, I think it's great to build community with each other. I think that's super helpful. And then Taylor says, yeah, pretty much like my salon shows local art. Yeah, I've totally shown in salons, and sells it, and you have to come to us. And I have a couple of my hand painted mandalas up 100% hustle, like most careers. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, if I could add one more thing to it, a lot of it, there's another way to go about it, which is not waiting to be found. It's like organizing your own shows, and inviting people to them. And there's certainly some of the more exciting shows that I've ever seen, or people maybe who have their own studio space, or find a space that's available to them for a minute, like a storefront that's closed, that's waiting to be leased, and asking if they can do a pop-up exhibition in there, hanging artwork in there for one night, inviting people to come, and really, like, absolutely doing it for yourself, instead of having someone invite you to someplace, like creating that place to show your work.
I love that. Yeah, totally. And I think, like, you know, I've had friends, a ton of friends, you know, open apartment galleries where, like, you know, you couldn't get into, you know, the, you know, kind of prestigious galleries or whatever in San Francisco. So they were like, yeah, I'm going to build my own gallery in my living room. And then people would do that. And then that got a lot of hype, and, you know, big papers and media sources and such in town would be like, wow, this is really cool. And then they would jump on board. And then suddenly there were a ton of people that wanted to show in the apartment, you know?
Yeah.
And then I've had friends that have made galleries out of their refrigerator, like, and then posting to social media. And I mean, I think the more resourceful, the better. There's a chicken coop in Portland that they've turned into an art gallery. And I think, what is it called? It's like, I think it's called like Chicken Coop Contemporary or something
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
so, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, all sorts of these interesting kind of alternative spaces is totally a way to go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a friend on the East Coast right now who built a gallery in his bedroom during this. It's called Shelter in Place Gallery. They're on Instagram that you can look, and it's actually like a scaled down 1 inch to 1 foot room that he built at like a model, basically like a dollhouse gallery. And so people have been submitting miniature works of their own art, shipping them to him, and he's hanging little shows.
Was
So
that just shown like on Hyper Allergic?
it might have been, yeah. He's doing really
Yeah.
well. He just started it, and
I think I just saw it. I think I just saw it last night. I was looking for,
yeah,
just researching stuff, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. It's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Super cool.
There's an infinite number of ways to do it.
For sure. Okay. Any final questions or thoughts?
I just wanted to say one more thing. I wanted to say that I thought this was really cool because I got to see like some more just out of the box art, because I think with a lot of the stuff that I was doing, I don't really think outside the box, and I'm like really scared to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So just seeing, my favorite one was Storms, how he was doing the glass, and you said like the first one will be more perfect, but then after that it gets more abstract, and that he's okay with that. And I think that, and the ink, like when you're working with ink, you're okay with making mistakes, and I'm not okay with making mistakes. So I think I have to like be okay with making mistakes and not just like keep crumpling up papers and like throwing them and starting over 1,000 times. So that's definitely something I need to work on. So this was definitely more helpful because I got to see more art that's just not perfect. And I think, and it was still like super beautiful and it was awesome and super cool to look at. So that was super cool. I just thought that was awesome.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like what you put on yourself, I think, in art making, that you feel like it's something that's not good enough for you personally or not perfect enough for you, but that's not something that anyone would ever experience coming to it outside of your creation process. Yeah, that's tough that I find in my own personal life making work. Sometimes I'm like, this painting just isn't good enough to show, or it didn't work. It didn't show exactly what I wanted it to show, but what it does for somebody else may have like at least as much importance as what I had hoped it would do if it had come out a different way in my head, So there's a lot of letting go in there.
Yeah, I think the letting go is really important. Any other thoughts? Questions? No? All right. Well, thank you so much, Dustin. It's been so fantastic.
Yeah, great.
I would love to just kind of chat with the rest of you for just a couple of minutes just to talk about next week. But we'll let Dustin go, and I'm going to stop the recording soon. But thank you so very much. Let's give him
You're
a
welcome.
nice clap. And
thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
If anyone did more in the gallery, we love our volunteers, and so if anyone ever would want to get involved with Disjecta or learn more about what we do or have some hands-on experience putting up shows and exhibitions or working behind the scenes, like in administrative and office type things to see how we work. We love to have people. So you can always reach out, and maybe when all this closes down, it's something sometimes you can do for credit or just personal experience. But love to hear from anybody if that's ever something that you'd be interested in. But otherwise, be safe and stay healthy. It's nice to meet y'all.
You too,
Thank you.
Dustin. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Right, bye.